Hello, welcome to Where You're Not Entertained. I'm Daniel,
I'm Rachel.
And I'm James.
and we're going to be talking about...
The Old Guard.
Oh, that was the thing? Was that intentional? Because I wasn't letting in on it.
No, Daniel.
it was not.
Okay.
Daniel forgot the title.
Talk about stealing thunder.
I'm sorry, you just looked so blank.
I went 100% blank.
Well, yeah, man, this was a conflicting movie for me. So let's go ahead and give a little bit of a rundown on it. So it's a Netflix release.
Yes.
Starring Charlize Theron, where her and a handful of other people are immortals. Kind of mercenaries, I suppose.
Ish.
Yeah, they're
immortal-ish.
temporarily undead.
Yeah. Right.
They're not
They
temporarily undead.
They come back, any type of mortal wound, at least that we saw, they come back to life and their wounds heal, which I don't understand how, Andy Theron's character has earrings, but we'll let that slide.
Maybe she had them prior to developing her ability.
That is one thing. They don't talk about how the abilities are developed. It's kind of implied that they're just like
You're born that way.
They're just born that way.
Magic. Yeah. They don't directly say though.
No, they don't.
This is based off of a comic book series as well that came out a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And that might have something to do with some of the issues I've had with it. It's not a terrible movie. I'm going to say that. I didn't hate it. I hope they do a sequel, and I hope they do it a little bit better. But we'll get into those a little later. What about you guys? How'd you feel about it?
I was super shocked to hear that you didn't like it, because as I was watching it, I distinctly remember thinking, wow, this might be the best Netflix original I've seen. I really enjoyed it. I know that it has its hokey moments and it has its unexplained things.
It's got some flaws.
It's definitely got some flaws, but I really enjoyed it. I think, for the most part, compared to some recent Netflix movies we've done, the writing was pretty strong. The acting was good.
The action was good.
The action was good. There wasn't really a lot of things or people that left me going, oh, God, do we have to do that?
Yeah, I'll agree with you. And those are the things that kept me from hating this movie. I love Charlize Theron, and I'll kind of watch her in anything. And the fact that she was kind of, badass, I've heard her compared to John Wick in this a lot of the times. Inspired character, it reminded me a lot of Atomic Blonde in that sense.
Yeah,
of her being her badass self, and I love that part of Charlize Theron's library.
It was a very physical role for her.
Yeah,
much like Atomic Blonde was.
Yes,
Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah,
is another one that is a masterpiece, and largely to do with her performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked a lot of the aspects of this. I like the world building, and I like the way that they set up the immortality with enough information to feel satisfied, but I don't know every in and out of how it works. So there's something left on the table for more.
Mm-hmm.
It was some of the production that I felt was so second rate. And I don't mean, this is going to sound really mean, but it felt like I was watching a B movie from the beginning, and it tainted my perspective of it. I actually went back and rewatched additional scenes after telling you guys I didn't like it, because I was kind of like, did I
remember something?
Or that maybe I got something in my head early, and I think I figured out what it was. there were transitions between scenes where they would play music from a soundtrack instead of a score.
Mm-hmm.
And the dialogue, the lyrics in the music itself made it feel like second rate, like just poorly produced. It was one of the issues that I had with Aquaman. And it's also, for some reason, I don't know if I don't remember if this is the case because I've tried to block those memories out of my head, but it reminded me a little bit of The Last Days of American Crime in the way that soundtrack was used poorly. But not in the rest of it. It wasn't close to that level of terrible. This was watchable, hands down.
And the music wasn't that bad. I mean, you can't compare this to Pitbull remixing Africa.
No, I'm not saying the music was bad. I'm saying it was used poorly. And the way it was jarring and kicked me out of the movie. Where if they had just used a score in those points, I think I would have enjoyed the movie a lot more, especially because they did it early in the movie. And then there was another scene that I felt was super hokey and really made me worry early on. And it's as soon as you have Niall first come back and she leaves the medical area. Mm-hmm. And you see her boots walking out the door, but there's a focus on a box that says Merrick. And I'm like, oh, it's a private company who's selling some sort of equipment to the military. I bet they're the bad guys. And then it literally transitions into seeing Merrick on the stage. And it's the dude from Harry Potter, Harry Melling. And he just looks like a sleazy bad guy. And they have his conversation. Right. And it felt comic booky in not a great way. I was like, oh, okay. And it was the combination of those two things that really left kind of a bad taste in my mouth early on. And I think if they had given me less clues that Merrick was going to be a total douche the whole time, then I would have been, at least there's a suspension of disbelief, but it was so blatantly obvious early that it kind of took away how threatening I felt like Copley could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
those are my two major complaints about the movie. After that, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that I didn't pay attention to the music quite as much because it didn't jar me as much. Like as you brought up, the Pitbull
Mr. Worldwide.
The Pitbull Africa remix in Aquaman was like totally left field. Like I have no idea where does this even fit in? This is like craziness. And I didn't feel that in this movie. But it's a possibility. Maybe I just didn't notice it.
Yeah.
The cheesy Merrick crate to Merrick talking. I kind of come to expect that from movies like this. So it didn't really bother me. But there were other things about it that made me like it. Even it maybe even helped me overlook those things. Such as like it's not your average story, right? Traditionally, immortals are immortal, period. The end. And they don't care if they get hurt because they're immortal.
Right.
They just go through, and when it's time to kill stuff, they get shot 50 billion times and they run up and rip your throat out with their bare hands. That kind of crap. But I really enjoyed the fact that wasn't the case here. It was these immortals aren't actually immortal forever. As they say, everything alive must die. which
Mm,
awesome. That's good. But they also have, even though at the beginning they did walk into a trap, but they also are highly skilled.
oh yes.
They're very skilled at what they do, and they don't just pop out and take bullets for fun. Like if they get shot, so be it. If they have to take a risk to accomplish a goal, then they'll do that. But the movie itself didn't seem to flaunt their immortality. It flaunted their skills. I mean, they were
Yeah.
extreme tacticians.
Yep.
And I guess
Was
that's what I
way
really
more
liked.
entertaining.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Sure. I also like the premise behind they do feel pain and they do have a reset.
Yes.
So if they get killed, it's not, I mean, they don't get killed, but I mean, there is that downtime.
It's not quite bloodshot.
It
where your
shuts the
face
body.
blows off and then it just comes back together.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of Divergent in the sense of it had some little hokey things, but it still had a really good storyline and it still brought its own unique worldview to things.
Mm-hmm.
And it had just enough information to give me some plausible reasons for what's happening without explaining it to the point of, well, that's not actually possible. Or those kinds of holes you can poke in stuff.
Yeah, they did seem to leave it a little more open. So you could poke those holes anyway. People that are going to poke those holes would do it anyway. But they don't give you the ammunition to do it yourself, I guess.
Right. But it was that good mixture between not exactly a popcorn thriller, but not this like Oscar film type situation. It was enjoyable, but it wasn't just, mindless entertainment.
So
for me, I hope that it's a good I hope it's a good setup for a better second one, because they definitely leave room for a second one with Quinn showing up at the very end.
Yes.
And with Booker being exiled for 100 years.
Right.
You don't know whether Andy's going to get her powers back or anything like that, because she's at least under the belief that she stopped healing super fast. So most likely she'll die if she gets killed permanently.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that they could do with a second one. I hope that they don't fall into the age-old trope that we have to go bigger than last time, because that's not always the case. I kind of wish that they had never put Merrick in this movie and made Copley the bad guy the whole time, and maybe had him turn at the very end into a good guy. Or, 6 months later, you start to see him trying to redeem himself or something like that. Mm-hmm. And done more of kind of Jason Bourne style with it than we're going to throw you in a government or in a high-tech laboratory and try to steal your superpowers. Because that's, I don't know, that sounds something like that belongs in a Sony Fantastic Four movie. Where I think that somebody knowing they're immortal and being smart enough to kind of stay one step ahead of them, almost in a Bonzian way, would have been a better movie. But with all of my critiques of it, I did find it entertaining, and it was good enough for me to not want this to die here. And luckily, I am in the minority. It seems like most people have liked this. It's gotten pretty good reviews, both from critics and fans. So,
yeah, I was going to ask you: did you agree with some of our points?
I agreed with all of them.
Okay, I was just curious. Like I said, it's those things that kind of took you out of it. One, I already expected, and then the other, I guess I just didn't notice, or it wasn't noticeable to me, so it didn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if any of those things were things that maybe like you didn't notice, or if they didn't have like much of an impact on the story to you. Or
they did, and that's why I didn't hate the movie.
Fair.
It's because the points that made me dislike it were so early on that it tainted my perspective on the rest of the movie, and they were playing catch up the whole time instead of them being little ticks against what is otherwise a movie I would have enjoyed. The music thing kicked me out really hard. I was not expecting it, because they do go back and they do have score in the movie, so it's not like they run nothing but soundtrack. But it was the vocals in the lyrics. It was also one of those things, like when you hear vocals in a transition scene, you expect there to be a radio turned on, and it's kind of muted when they actually go into the scene, and then it fades out as they walk away or something like that. There was no semblance of transition. It just faded out. And I was just like, wow, that was really jarring to me as a viewer.
Why?
Yeah. And then the kind of slap in my face, oh, here's your sleazy bad guy. There's no illusion that this could be a cool or an enticing character or somebody, you know, because a really good bad guy is somebody you kind of like, in a dark or secret way, but you know you shouldn't. Those are the best bad guys. But Merrick was set up just to be a loser from the get go. And you're like, oh, cool. I hope you die earlier than later.
Yeah, I do think they did a kind of a bad job with him. He could have been more, I guess, a little more humanized at the beginning, and then you get to see like how horrible he is.
Or maybe he is like, he is working with Copley behind the scenes, but he approaches them as a, hey, Copley's the bad guy trying to steal your powers. I want to help you guys understand them better and see if maybe we can help other people. And then it turns later that he's the bad guy behind it all or something like that.
Yeah.
But there was no misdirection whatsoever. It was very obvious from the get-go.
No, and I think still on soundtrack versus score, I think it's very interesting that you said that, because now that I really sit here and think about it, that was really my biggest complaint with Atomic Blonde. They had such a cool, punchy soundtrack for their preview, and then when you get to the movie, it's gone. The tone was kind of deadened because they didn't have that same interesting music. It was like they had the same songs, but they took the beat out of them.
And don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily mind a soundtrack with music with vocals when it's done right. The Matrix, which I was talking about before this episode when we were just chatting, has tons of lyrics in its music throughout. I thought that it worked really well there. Or if you have, a punk song going during an action fight, that can be awesome. But when it's done in like a scene transition, and then there's no reason other than they wanted to put that person's music in right there, it just seems out of place.
Yeah, I definitely think that shows different perspectives on how music affects movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm sure most people weren't bothered by the soundtrack in Atomic Blonde. I think that was more me than most people.
I think that in that case, the preview, as happens, I think the preview messed up the movie, honestly, in Atomic Blonde's case, because I've watched it a couple times since then.
But
I've watched it a couple times since then without that preview in my head. Like, I can no longer remember the music that they were playing. And the 80s music that they play, which is what the whole thing is, it's all 80s music.
Yeah.
It's a little pepped up and it kind of fits. Is it as like thriller action packed as what was in the preview? No, it's not.
Yeah.
But it seems to fit the tone of the movie.
It was the same 80s music in the preview, just a different remix than what they put in.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. That's enough. We're not here to talk about Atomic Blonde. We're here to talk about the old guard. And overall, I really enjoyed this film.
Yeah. I think it was directed really well.
And it had some really good, interesting moments as well. Like, for me, I really enjoyed the scene with Marwan Kanzari. I cannot remember his character's name now. But he and
Joe?
Yes.
Joe and Nikki?
Yeah, when we get Joe and Nikki in the transport truck together. And the guy makes the joke about, oh, is he your boyfriend?
Oh, yeah.
And oh my gosh, he just comes out with this huge, long, romantic speech, and there's nothing to say back. There's like,
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, fine.
I have nothing to say because I don't know what that feels like.
Right.
I have never cared about anyone like that ever, so never mind.
And then they kill them all.
Yep. But I just thought it was a really interesting thing because they made me a little apprehensive with the, is he your boyfriend joke? And I thought, oh, what are they going to do with this? Are they going to
How are they going to tiptoe around this?
gimmicky or yeah? And they just went for it and made it seem really natural.
Mm-hmm.
So
I thought
that. I thought that was
they did a great job. Those two were wonderful together.
Yeah.
They had tons of chemistry.
Yeah.
They were super good. Yeah. I think
everybody was good in this. I mean, to be honest with you.
Aside from Dudley Dursley, I think. And I don't really know that was
I think
him.
his acting in it was just fine. I think
it was bad casting. I don't think that it was him. I don't think he did a bad job. I think that the character shouldn't have been there unless somebody who just embodied it so perfectly that he couldn't be removed because it was perfect.
Right.
Is how I feel about it.
I think it was kind of flat writing. They took
generic,
cheap bad guy shots, and they could have made him more dynamic and more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But he was the only down part for me. I thought everyone else, Copley was really good, and obviously all of the Immortals were really good.
Yeah.
And I want to know more about Quinn and Andy's past and see the Crusades when Joe and Nikki were fighting, and I'm very interested in the lore and the world that they built. And that's why I'm actually rooting for a second one.
Yeah.
That's potential wrath.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. And I do believe that they set that up perfectly to continue on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe tell a little bit more backstory, but I did also enjoy that they kind of showed you the good that was being done. Like, that's not something that you often get from I'm an Immortal kind of movie. Where, the person that you save's grandson's grandson invented something that saved 30,000 people or, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they didn't focus on the person she saved. They focused on the outcome of that person being saved.
Yeah, it seemed to do more with fate.
So almost a butterfly effect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And so I'm interested to see what they're going to be able to do with it going forward.
Yeah. Definitely. Hopefully they continue. I think it has enough buzz around it that they'll be able to do that. But
I saw Charlize Theron mentioned that a second one will happen when the time is right. So
beautiful.
Whatever that actually
when the time
means.
is right. Okay.
Well, in these times with
when we can actually film again,
the pandemic, it's a little uncertain to say the least.
Yeah, exactly. It is. To say the least.
Well, let's hop into favorite scenes.
All right.
What about you, Daniel? What was your favorite scene?
I think my favorite scene was actually the scene on the plane.
The fight.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. When Andy's gone and picked up Niall.
That was mine as well.
Yeah, it's a great scene, and it's the Niall's kind of having to come to the realization that this is real, and she's not had a trick played on her, and she's not dreaming or and then they start fighting, and the fighting, the choreography in the plane itself with the movements was awesome. I thought it was a really great fight scene, and I thought that Charlize Theron did a great job of kind of being the mentor in that situation. Not
Yeah, she showed her up without like punishing her per se.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't until the end where she was like, "We're done,"
Right.
and then she kept going where she had to like actually hurt her,
Right.
which was again at this point not a big deal. It's going
Right,
to
and
hurt,
they just
but you're going to be fine.
I did really love the line right before it before they're about to take off. Niles asks, "Is this safe?" And Andy's response is, "Does that really matter?"
All right.
You just look at things totally different if you can't die. Like, oh no, the plane crashes. I hope it's close to where we're going so we don't have to walk.
Right.
Yeah, I liked that portion of the scene when she's like, "Well, you don't speak Russian, do you?" And then it's, "Well, we don't need a pilot to land. It won't kill us." But
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Oh, and the way that misdirect
totally
that is like a foreshadowing for the end on how they kill Merrick.
Yeah.
I loved the play dead stunt. I thought that was wonderful. That's honestly why this is my favorite scene.
Yeah, it was great. That
Yeah.
was a great
Mhm.
stunt.
Play Dead was really, that was really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, that covers both Daniel and myself. What about you, Rachel? What was your favorite scene?
I think probably for me, I don't know, but I'm going to go with my favorite scene was after they realize they've walked into a trap.
Mhm.
Because for me, I really liked the way that they absolutely kicked ass in there. And it shows you their combat skills and the way that kind of they're going to deal with things. And they've always dealt with things.
Did an amazing job.
That, it was so cool to see them come back to life and watch their bullet holes close up, and then they just decimate everyone.
Yeah. It was very stylized. It was really cool.
Well, and even in that, so like each time they had these battles, they gave you the sense that these people have been fighting with each other for a long time because they're playing off each other's moves.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I don't know how they were able to really accomplish that, like as actors. Like, I don't know if they just did a whole bunch of scenes and cut it all together, or if some of them really got that good that they were able to do the choreography without, a lot of issues. But it's like the movements. One person's movement would feed into another's, which would feed into another's. Like, I kicked this guy and he flung a shotgun, which, someone else catches and uses and, chucks it to the side, and it's laying underneath someone else that's about to get kicked. And, that it's just the whole, the whole thing I thought was done really well.
Agreed.
I would think in casting, they were focusing pretty hard on actors who can carry out this kind of physicality.
Well, sure, but it's different between being able to be physical and being able to
play well with the others. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the choreography of it is you have to memorize the movements the same way you would memorize lines. And the only way you can do that is by running through it a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And they're all kind of actors that have done other action-packed films, and so I think they probably had a good starting point, better than somebody like me that would have literally no combat training whatsoever. But yeah, I thought it was great. I like watching Charlize Theron fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be pretty much okay with a movie of an hour and a half of that.
Yeah, her hand-to-hand combat is pretty good to watch.
With an axe? That was cool as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The axe was cool. It was a nice touch that they all had old style weapons, swords and axes.
Right, like their original weapon.
Yeah, along with their along with their ARs and their super tack gear.
Sure.
Yeah. I did appreciate the fact that none of them were running around in like 18th century garb or anything like that.
It's not the Highlander.
Right. There's that trope about people who've lived a long time. You know what I mean? It's like they stopped learning about fashion in the 1700s.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the first Thor.
Right. Or vampire movies are very commonly do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers it for the old guard. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before we got off?
Nope.
All right. Hopefully you enjoyed the movie at least as much as Daniel and Rachel did, and enjoyed our episode covering it a little bit more. If you did, go online, like, and subscribe, and please join us next time on Were You Not Entertained?